last year, for the most part, our season, our starters didn't play in the second half. This group has been able to do that. So I think in a lot of ways, this group is maybe more prepared for a 4-quarter football game. They're more prepared for, a battle that goes the distance. I do think that that's been a major benefit to us, though, having those extra snaps, those extra reps, those guys being on the field longer this year has benefited us because there was so much new this year. I think that the season as a whole has probably put us in a better situation by the end of the year than it did last year.
It's still 10 yards for a first down. It's still 6 points for a touchdown. It's just a football game. You're playing against high school kids who put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you do. So we're going to break it back down to just being a simple game, but definitely need to have them have an opportunity just to soak in the moment and to soak in how big it is, because it is overwhelming at first. I remember my first time down there as an assistant coach, very overwhelming, just to be in that stadium, to be in the presence of all those things you've seen as a kid, you watched as a kid, and take time to enjoy it. But then we got to get back focused and realize it's just a game. It might be played on a field you aren't used to, but it's just a game. It's still 80 yards and 8-man. It's still 10 yards for a first down, like I said. You still got to do the little things right to win the game.
Welcome into another edition of Small Town Ball, a podcast produced by Hurrdat Sports and NEB Preps. Andrew Kuta of Sandy Creek is joining us now. And Coach, congratulations into the state championship game. How does it feel in your heading back to Lincoln now?
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're really excited. We understand how fortunate of a situation we're in, and we're greatly appreciative of the moment. But I think our guys are really focused on the task at hand, and really just taking it one day at a time and making sure that we do what we can do in order to be successful.
Okay, so before we get to the nitty-gritty of your season, the state championship, you were deer hunting this past weekend? I mean, that had to be already planned. You just needed some time away from football?
Yeah, it's a family tradition. We go every year, and kind of decided, after going into last week, win or lose last Friday, I was going to go down Saturday morning and spend time with all the guys in my family. And we were only down there for about 24 hours, but still got to spend some time with those guys and kind of take a deep breath and just take a minute away from it.
How important is that, especially at this time of year? You guys have had long, extended football seasons the past few years, and maybe it is good to just take that step away, because then you can rebuild, refresh, and be ready for a long week ahead preparing for a D1 title.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think it's really important. We talk in our program a lot about how football needs to be the priority during the season, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other priorities. Guys have to put their family first. Guys have to put their faith first, for those of them that have that. So we understand that, just because football, even though football is the number one priority, there are other number one priorities, and family time is certainly one of them.
All right, so let's talk about your team. We talked with you in the preseason, the expectation for this program and what it meant to get to that first state championship. It was a new look team, but yet this playoff run has felt like what we had seen even last year. You've outscored your opponents 193-48. You led your semifinal halftime 22-8. What's been the key to success in just getting out to dominant performances?
Yeah, we felt like coming into the year we had a lot of questions, but not a lot of doubts. Returning, only 3 starters on defense and 2 on offense. We knew that there were holes to fill, and we knew that there would be a lot of questions and that there would be a lot of room for growth early in the season. But our guys have really committed to that each and every day that we've been together. I feel like we've shown growth each week. We've gotten better at the things that we do. We found a little bit of a different identity, both offensively and defensively. And they really grasped onto that and really done a great job with just moving forward and improving with that. So I'm really proud of the process that these guys took this year and their commitment to just building each and every week.
I know we talked about it in the preseason as well, but did you start to feel that target was a bit larger than it was in years past, especially since you are the defending champion?
I mean, I think being in the position we are, I think you're going to get everybody's best look. But I think that's a great thing. I think that we're fortunate to be in that situation. You're going to get great game plans. We're really fortunate to play a number of extremely good programs and really well-coached teams. Just going down the list, Johnson Brock is extremely well-coached, and they have some great athletes. Shelby Rising City, obviously the same. They were, playing last Friday. Other teams, EMF, I think, is extremely well coached. Sutton is extremely well coached. Their Central is extremely well coached. So we get, regardless of where we are in our program, our regular season was set up to play a lot of really challenging football games against a lot of really good teams that are really well coached. But I think that's a benefit to us. I think it's good for us. And it's something that we definitely appreciate, the fact that, each week we step on the field, we're going to get a great look from somebody, and they're going to be ready to play. So
I know you mentioned all those great teams that got you battle tested and ready for this moment. Those are 6 playoff teams prior to the postseason that you played this year. And you even beat 6 other teams that would end up winning a playoff game, kind of mixing and matching some of those numbers there too. Is this year's team a little bit more battle tested than a season ago? Or do you feel like the path to get to Lincoln was about the same?
I think that's a really interesting question. I think that this group has definitely played in more competitive football games than we did last year. Last year, for the most part, our season, our starters didn't play in the second half. This group has been able to do that. So I think in a lot of ways, this group is maybe more prepared for a 4-quarter football game. They're more prepared for, a battle that goes the distance. I do think that that's been a major benefit to us, though. Having those extra snaps, those extra reps, those guys being on the field longer this year has benefited us because there was so much new this year. I think that the season as a whole has probably put us in a better situation by the end of the year than it did last year.
And speaking on just kind of the differences from last year to this year, I know that comparison's probably been made 100 times in the different conversations you've had with different media members and maybe even throughout the season too. But it feels like this is almost a completely new look team, but yet it's still the same logo, the same name, the same school. Does it feel like it's a completely different type of season? I mean, you even mentioned it there that the second half of games have been maybe not more competitive, but you've had to be able to keep playing, whereas a year ago you were maybe blowing out some more opponents and getting up on them at halftime.
Yeah, it's certainly different, both offensively and defensively. Offensively last year we were really reliant on Shaw running the ball, which I think rightfully so. I think most people would have done what we chose to do in that situation. This year, we've tried to be a little bit more versatile offensively. We tried to spread the ball around more. We've worked on getting the ball into space with our athletes more than we did last year. This year, I think we have 4 guys with like 25 or more receptions. I know we have 5 guys with like right at 300 yards or more receiving. So we've tried to be more versatile offensively and tried to do more this year with that. Defensively, it's a different look team as well. We have a new defensive coordinator this year. Logan Searle's done a tremendous job in his first year calling our defense. But that looks different too. We don't have the same group that we did last year. So we're in a different front. We're doing more coverages. We're doing more blitzes. We're not doing the exact same thing that we did last year. So it is a different feel. And I think it's been great for us. I think it's been great to see the growth. Our guys have gotten better at it each and every week. And I think they've really kind of found their stride in it and have gotten really comfortable in what it is that we're trying to accomplish.
You mentioned a little bit about the tough schedule. We talked about that, but one of those notably was your only loss so far this season, and it came in week 2 on the road at Shelby Rising City. Was there maybe another game that taught you as many lessons that you learned in that contest that led to your success, or is it really what happened at Shelby that kind of transformed your team to get ready and get back to Lincoln?
I think it's a little bit of a combination of both of those things. We knew early in the year this year we weren't going to look the same as we thought we could late in the season. And we're not the same team that we were in week 2. Not to say that, if we were able to play Shelby last week or this week or whenever, it would still be a very competitive football game. They're a very good football team. But we're not the same team. We're better than we were. We're more experienced than we were. Guys have had more reps. We're more comfortable in what we're trying to do offensively and defensively. So we knew there was going to have to be growth throughout the season. I do think ultimately losing that game could have been a good thing for us. I think it definitely got rid of some of, maybe the comfort that our guys had. It really changed the sense of urgency that our guys had coming to practice every day. And I think it ended up being a benefit to us. Other games that I thought were really good for us, I thought Sutton was a great game for us. They came out in the first half and had a tremendous game plan. They were very patient offensively. They ran the football. They forced us into a different front, bringing our safety down into the box in our even front that we hadn't done all year. And that was an in-game adjustment that we made that game. So that was one that I think was really beneficial to us. Their Central exposed some things, both formationally and then in our pass responsibility. So those are two games that I can point to that were really good for us in terms of developing and growing and adjusting throughout the season.
Now, obviously, talking about your team and how they've continued to improve as the season goes, it really starts with Cam Seeley. That's the name everyone will really point to start. But he's just one of a bunch of guys who have gotten better from last season to this year and as the season progressed too. Let's start with Cam. I don't know if enough people give him the credit in which he deserves for what he did last year as a freshman, just being either the backup quarterback or just a receiver or doing what he did for your offense. But when did you notice that he really got comfortable this season in maybe just shedding that Ethan Shaw image that was Sandy Creek for so many seasons?
Yeah, I struggle with giving him a ton of credit. He's my nephew, so I don't want to speak too highly on him. And he knows that. He's used to that. You could tell early in the season he was putting a lot of pressure on himself. He was trying to be perfect, trying to be what Ethan was for us last year. And that's something that we talked about a lot throughout the offseason is he's got to be his own player and he's got to do his own thing. Him and Ethan are not the same players. But Cameron's really good. Cameron's capable of running the offense just as efficiently as Ethan ran it. It just looks different. He's not 6'2", 220 pounds. So it has to look a little different. And really throughout the entire season, there's been a ton of growth from him specifically, just in his understanding of the offense, his confidence in the offense, his confidence in the pocket, his confidence in decision-making and changing plays at the line of scrimmage. That's really been true throughout. I think the game where I saw the biggest jump probably was week 3 to week 4 when we saw Tri-County. He was incredibly efficient. He only played in the first half. And looking back, I think he either went 15 of 16 in the air or 16 of 16 in the air. I can't remember. And he was incredibly efficient that game. Another game that really stood out to me for him was last week. He checked more at the line last week than I think he checked all season. Plainview was adjusting their defense, so we're giving us some different looks, and he did a tremendous job of making those decisions at the line of scrimmage. So I've seen a ton of growth from him this year, which I expected to. I expected the confidence level and the comfortability level to improve throughout the year.
If people are box score watchers and haven't watched either you or Crofton, they look at this matchup and they have to think, my God, there's going to be points in this game, right? Like it's just going to be an offensive back and forth. And you had that game last year against Staten where it was down to the wire, whoever gets the ball last, but a couple of key defensive stops really changed that game. Do you go in with the same mentality this year, or do you expect something different from what you've seen in preparation for them?
Like you said, I think people look at the box scores, look at the averages, and they're going to expect this game to be in the 50s. And honestly, looking at our two defenses on film, I will not be surprised if this ends up being a defensive battle. I think part of the reason why both our scores and their scores have looked the way that they have is that we've been able to score the ball quickly offensively, which has allowed for more possessions. And honestly, I don't know that that'll be the case on Monday. I think that they're really good defensively. They're very physical. They fly around. They make it really hard to run the football. We're going to have to be able to throw the football. We're going to have to be able to put the ball in space, and we're going to have to be able to run some plays outside of the box in order to try to loosen that up. And for them, I think we have a defense that can slow down their power run game. I certainly don't know that I would say that I think anybody in Class D1 can stop it because they do a tremendous job of blocking up front. They're extremely physical. They're really relentless with what they do. But I think we're going to be able to slow it down enough where I think a lot of people are under the impression that this game's going to be in the 50s. And I won't be surprised if this game is, high 20s to low 30s either way, just because I think our defenses both will be able to slow down the other offense enough to kind of limit the possession number and slow the game down that way.
It's felt like your offense has played pretty balanced throughout the year too, but then defensively, is it trying to force Crofton to play more balanced themselves that gives you an advantage? Is that something you've seen on film with just how dominant the rushing attack has been?
Yeah, I think it's a philosophy thing, and I think I think different coaches would approach it different ways. But for us, we certainly want to take away the things that they're best at. So they run power run game in the box extremely well. We need to try to slow that down and limit that. When they the next thing they like to go to is some toss where they're getting the ball outside. So we're going to need to slow that down. And our goal is going to be to force them to beat us with their third or fourth option in terms of what they're most comfortable with. And I'm certain that that's what they're going to try to do to us too, is slow down our quarterback run game, slow down our screen game, and make us beat them with our third and fourth options as well.
8-man feels so interesting comparative to a lot of the 11-man schedules because of the added playoff game, and your regular season games almost mean more because of seeding and all the other different potential that goes in there. I wanted to ask you, since you were in this experience last year, is it a bit of a facade that there's championship game experience, or is there something to it that a lot of the guys on your team, comparative to the team you're facing, have been in Memorial Stadium? They have raised that trophy. They've had this experience, or because of the amount of big games that you have to play and the extra travel and all the other things that go into 8-man postseason, that it's just kind of the next game up on the schedule?
I think a lot of that depends on the program and depends on the approach that they take to it. I think a lot of people would be under the impression that having this championship experience matters. It matters that we were there last year. It matters that we've been there. But the flip side of that is Stanton was in our shoes last year, and we were in Crofton's last year, and we found a way to win that game. So I don't think that ultimately it has that big of an impact. I think where it probably affects the game the most is at the start of the game. You could tell last year in our championship game with Stanton that the first half of the first quarter, the first 5 or 6 minutes, we weren't as prepared as they were because they'd been there before. But after that, after the pads pop after the pads pop a couple times, after both teams have a possession, I think both teams settle in, and it's just a football game.
How long does that take to settle in? I know you mentioned just popping the pads, getting that first hit of action as well, but even for just the players, warming up, looking around, it's a completely different environment than anywhere you'll play this season.
Yeah, I don't think that even for our guys, the guys that have been there, I don't think they'll be really comfortable until midway through the first quarter. I think it's going to take each team having a possession, each team, getting some blocks made, getting some tackles made, doing some of those things. I think it'll take until then for both groups to really settle in and just play the game as if it was any other. But the cool part about that, I guess, is that, the last 25, 26, 28 minutes of that game, 35 to 38 minutes of that game will be, it'll just be football. It'll be guys settled in and just playing ball.
You mentioned kind of the defensive aspects of this contest, and if it will be a defensive game, who are those guys that maybe you're tapping on the helmet this week saying, we've got to have a few impact plays if we're going to slow them down and win another state title?
I think it starts with the guys up front with what they do offensively. I think it's really important that our defensive tackles have a big game. They have to be able to defeat one-on-one blocks, and they have to be able to hold their ground against double teams. And they've shown the ability to do that this year. Christian Shaw's been tremendous for us. I know he just crossed the 100 tackle mark this year for us as a defensive tackle. Josh Spray's been really good for us, especially in open field and in his pass rush. He just plays with relentless effort. And then I think the other guys in the middle of your box, guys like Austin Clark, guys like Caden Schmidt, they have to step up and make some plays. One of the things that Crofton does extremely well is they stay on blocks and they keep driving, and their running back doesn't go down on first contact. He's a big physical football player. So it's going to be really important for us to get off blocks and rally to the football. In a lot of cases, it seems like the first guy there is the one that's the most important. But I think on Monday, it's going to be the second and third guys that get there that are going to be the guys that finish off the tackle. So it's going to be really critical for us to rally.
Coach, sometimes when it comes to this moment in that same conversation of championship experience and everything else that goes into this is sometimes you need that little extra motivation, whether it's getting revenge over a Stanton team from the year prior in the semifinal loss, or just seeing if you can cross that hurdle to win your first state title as a team. But this year, you are the defending champion. Does that have a different mentality, or how do you build that chip on your shoulder to then get over the hump once again?
I think that I think our group has benefited from a little bit of selective media sharing from the coaching staff. I think we've done a pretty good job with that. I do think these guys have, a little bit of chip on their shoulder with just the doubt that people came into the season that these guys could accomplish what they've accomplished. I think a lot of people, and I understand why, but I think a lot of people look at what we lost last year, and for part of it, we just kind of got rode off, I guess. And I think that stuck with our group. one of the preseason polls, I think we were preseason 5 or 6 or whatever, and it doesn't really matter. But that can be used as motivation, and that we got a poster of that hanging up in our weight room, and it has been since the start of the summer. So things like that. But I do think ultimately it's less about the motivation, and it's more about with these guys, they just care about each other so much, and they play so hard for each other. They don't want to let each other down, and they're so unselfish. We have such an unselfish group that really some of that extra stuff probably isn't even necessary, but we try to give it to them anyways because it can't hurt, I guess. So we try to give them what we can.
I was going to say, hopefully selective media pairings. I don't know if small town ball is included in any of that, but listen, you don't have to share any of the secrets. But I don't think I've given Sandy Creek too much to write home about. But who knows? If that's what's used you guys to motivate, I'm happy to oblige as I can.
Yeah, I don't think anything that you guys have done has been included in that. But even the stuff that is, we know it's not personal. Everybody's got a job to do, and if I was on the outside looking in on one of the media people, I would not have had us in the top 2 or 3 this year, just with we lost, 4,000 total yards last year, and we lost 80 touchdowns last year and 500 tackles. You'd have been crazy to have us in that group, just looking at the numbers. So I understand it entirely. And I think our guys do too, but they choose to use it as motivation, and that's fine by me.
Coach, we'll kind of wrap up here with this, that the difference maker in this one could be whether it's championship experience like we've mentioned or just getting comfortable in the scene at Memorial Stadium. Crofton, a bit of a younger roster. They have been deep in playoff runs. They've been an excellent program, but have not been to Memorial Stadium in some time. How do you take advantage of maybe that opportunity with your roster that has been here in this moment?
I think for us, it's going to be really important for us to start the game fast. I think with their style of play, with their physicality, with their commitment to running the football and running it really well, I don't know that the comfort level or the experience is going to factor in that much. I do think there's a world where we could benefit very early in the game with a fast start, defensively getting a stop or offensively going and finding a score, maybe hitting a big play somewhere or forcing a turnover. I think something like that early in the game could impact the game. But ultimately, I think they're an extremely well-coached group. They're very disciplined. They play extremely physical football. I think their game translates anywhere you play. I think they could go play in a parking lot and be very successful with just what they do. They do it so well. So I'm not sure that the experience really factors in too much. I think early in the game you could maybe see that come into play a little bit, but I expect them to settle in, and I won't be surprised at all if they're ready to go, from opening kickoff and just play their football. And their football is really good. Their football is good enough to be here. It's good enough to win this game. So hats off to them and what they've accomplished this season. They're another team that, like you mentioned, they're young, but they've had a lot of growth throughout the year. They lost 2 games relatively early, and they've been excellent since. So it's going to be a great football game on Monday.
Coach, to be fair, I don't think I want to play either of your teams in a parking lot. So I'm just glad that I'm on the sidelines for this one. Well, Coach, congratulations on a great season and this playoff run. Best of luck.
Awesome. Hey, I appreciate the time, man. Thank you.
Welcome back to Small Town Ball, a podcast brought to you by Hurrdat Sports and NEB Preps as we preview the Class D1 championship game. It is none other than head coach for Crofton, Johnnie Ostermeyer. Congratulations, Coach. You've gotten Crofton into the state championship game. And, man, this has been maybe not surprising. I don't want to label it that way, but maybe it's the way that your team has went out and won playoff games has been surprising. Can we start there? Have you been a bit surprised at those final scores when you look back over the past 4 games?
Not really. I knew what these kids had in store, and I knew there was just little things we'd been missing out on, just the little details we need to take care of that we didn't take care of, in previous games. So I knew if we executed well, I knew this offense is an explosive offense, and we had the players to be explosive. So it was nice to see them put it all together. Maybe a little surprised 90. I didn't really, I knew we could score, 50, 60 points. I didn't really think we'd get to 90, but yeah, that was maybe a touch surprising, but overall just us being able to score was not surprising to me.
And for that first round playoff, it almost felt like a statement. And I know maybe not your intention to come out and necessarily intimidate opponents with that final score, but you set the tone so early for what this postseason run was going to look at. But what I find maybe not so surprising for you that's been with the program and obviously where your team has traveled from is that this wasn't necessarily surprising finals from the postseason run that you're on, from what you've been through the regular season. Have you seen your team maybe transform and continue to improve after a couple of postseason games through this past month or so?
Gotcha. We can definitely tell ever since that Bloomfield loss where we weren't paying attention to details. There was just little things here and there. It wasn't like we totally got dominated. We just didn't do little things right to win that game. We talked about, we came into practice that next Monday and we sat down and had a long meeting, a long talk. And I said, everybody needs to talk and this is going to get out. We need to clear this thing up. And we need to, start to focus because I said, from now on, our playoffs start right here. So in week 5, we looked at our playoffs started week 5. We knew we had to win out if we wanted to put ourselves in a good seed to be able to have a chance to get to the state championship. We knew that we had the players to do that. We knew we had the scheme to do that. We just had to focus on little things. We had to go back to the basics of proper steps with blocking, proper technique with tackling, knowing what your keys are, not watching the backfield and all the eye candy that goes on there. Just focus on your keys. Watch what the linemen are doing. They're going to lead you. They're going to tell you what's going on. And once we got back to the basics and just do those little things, this last run here in the playoffs was amazing. I mean, as a play caller, it was really easy to call those first 2 games. It didn't matter what I called. They went out and executed, which makes you feel really good as a coach that you can call whatever you want, pass or run, and they're going to execute and you're going to get some yards and be able to be successful. So.
Okay, so be honest, being the play caller for this team has to be the most fun job you've ever had, right? Because if you're going to be putting up 90 points, you're averaging almost 67 points in playoff games. That is a tremendous average to have, and it's winning football. It's not just outpacing the other opponent every single week. Your defense has played up to snuff as well, and you're winning by wide margins. So this just feels like it's been a lot of fun for Crofton over the past month.
Yeah, it's been amazing, and the energy at practice has just been through the roof, and we want to keep that energy up at practice. Guys are battling with each other, trying to make each other better. And I told my guys, I said, when your practice is your toughest part of your week, the games are fun. And I said, you got to make it hard on each other. You guys can't take it easy on each other because that's not going to help us in a game. Because we know that the guys we're going against, they want to win the game just as bad as we do.
Coach, we mentioned a little bit about the playoff push, the run you've been on since that Bloomfield game. You guys had a season high average since that Bloomfield loss, but the scoring, as we mentioned, since Kimball has been impressive. Is it better execution? Did you get healthier? Is it maybe just the opponents you played? What has been that difference in just getting even more of an offensive output to 110% comparative to where you were after the loss to the Bees?
Yeah, it came back to just focusing on the basics. I think we were thinking too much about things that we didn't need to be thinking about. Take your basic first step, make sure you put your hand placement, your head placement in the right spot. Because if you're in a good position, even if you don't quite get that knockout block, you're going to get enough in his way that we're going to be able to make things happen, especially when we have running backs like Tyson Jackson and Jace Panning, and Grant, those guys can make things happen with just a little bit of a hole. In the pass game, it's just making sure we account for everybody who could rush. I think earlier in the season, a couple of times, people weren't talking. Our line wasn't talking like they should have been. So they assumed the guy beside him was going to do something. And we talked more about now my center makes a lot of calls just to make sure everybody's on the same page, which way we're going to block, who's blocking who, and just focusing on those little things helped this offense just really start to, really move the way we wanted to and really start to stack up points.
There's always the different style of rushing attacks, and you are one of the more explosive ones in 8-man football. 3 rushers, as you mentioned, over 420 yards on the season. You have 4 players that have rushed for at least 5 touchdowns this year, too. But you do it in explosive ways, but yet you can also churn the clock and be able to get those short yardages when you need them, too. Do you rely on some of those playmakers more to say, hey, if you get a one-on-one, we need you to make the big play? Or is it more reliant on the offensive line saying, we got to open up some opportunities for our running backs?
I think it's a little of both. We do lean on the offensive line quite a bit, but we talk all the time about, football. I have a saying that I say to these guys, everyone loves football, but football loves no one. You only get a certain amount of time to play this game. You only get a certain amount of opportunities in a season. You only get a certain amount of opportunities during a game to make a play. And when your number is called and your time's called, you need to make that play because you don't know when the next one's going to come. So we talk about it all the time. It's just making the most of every time you step on that field, knowing when there's certain pass plays, we know who the main target is. Hey, if you're the Cadillac, make sure you run that Cadillac route as hard as you can, because if we can hit the Cadillac, we'll hit the Cadillac, but also knowing that if you can't hit the Cadillac, we have checkdowns available, and those guys just doing their job and doing that. So, and it's been good to see, Preston Foxhoven, our sophomore quarterback, his development, really understanding the offense, understanding his reads and who he's supposed to be reading on each play. Every play I give him one read and then a check down, just so it's really easy on him that he can say, okay, if this isn't there, I come to here. And that way he doesn't have to go through a bunch of progressions. He does a great job, and we're getting deeper and deeper into the playbook where we can get into the multi-progressions. But for now, it's just taking care of those little things. And these guys are doing a great job with that.
We'll talk about Tyson Jacobsen here in a second. He's obviously one of your best playmakers on the team, but this is a roster full of just great athletes and talented players, and gaining more experience as the season progressed. You definitely left no stone unturned. Is that tough on you as a play caller? It's the best problem to have if it is that, man, who do I get the ball to on this opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, that's the hardest thing, is getting the ball spread around and making sure I'm keeping everybody happy. I probably have some receivers, Jackson Line. I don't think he had a touchdown catch till last regular game of the season. But he is a great athlete, and we it just happened to be that he wasn't getting the ball because somebody else was open first and they got the ball to them, and I know he didn't care. He's like, I just want to win, coach. I just want to win. But he was so happy to get in the game. Then he had a huge touchdown catch this last game for us, to put us up by 2 scores going into halftime. And he's a guy that hadn't got the ball a whole lot before that. You got Colton Bornhagen, another good tight end for us. I think he only has 1 or 2 catches on the year, but a kid who in some years would have had a ton of catches by now. But then when you have Trevor Allen and you have Jace Panning and you have Tyson Jackson and you have Grant, I mean, like you said, it just trying to keep that balance and then trying to keep other people guessing too. It's not just a one-man show here. We got a bunch of weapons. And I know my line. They're so excited when we have those guys in the backfield, especially Tyson Jackson. They're excited to block for him because they want to see what he can do, and they want to keep stacking up those yards on their stats as well. And he always gives them the praise and the love. Without my lineman, he's like, I can't make those yards, and he's 100% right. That line does a nice job.
Speaking of you're rushing a game again, and with Tyson Jackson, he's averaging nearly 10 yards a carry, which is so impressive. And in the game of football, I mean, anytime you can have a running back that you hand the ball off and he's getting nearly a first down every single time, that's someone you want to rely on. Over 2,000 yards rushing, past that in the Hemmingford game too. What's the secret to kind of his ability to breaking games open with his big playability?
His dedication and hard work. That kid worked his butt off this summer. He's our strongest kid when it comes to, squat, deadlift, and bench. He's the strongest kid on the field for us. And he really dedicated himself to that. So we knew he was going to be a very powerful runner. The one thing I think we were all shocked by was by his speed. We brought in a new speed development program this offseason. We started it last year during track. Kind of start this new speed development. And so I was excited about what it was going to bring to the table. I didn't realize that we were going to see these results this quick. I've had a lot of coaches tell me, we are just surprised at how fast your whole team is, even your line, how fast they are and how they just move. They said, you don't see linemen like, Puerto Bartles, that kid, he plays line for me. Probably should be playing fullback, but he plays line. He played fullback a little bit at the beginning of the year, but I need him at line. But he can run a 400 in 52 seconds. I mean, how many other times do you have a lineman can run a 452 seconds? It doesn't happen very often. So just the speed of our overall team has been impressive from a lot of coaches. They've told me.
Now, yeah, I don't want to get into a track race with your team. It sounds like I don't know if I would win that, or maybe even a weightlifting battle. I don't know that there's many opportunities I have being 28 and a half years old that I would have over some of your kids. You have experience in arena football, correct? That you were a former arena player. How
Correct.
much of that translates into what you want to do offensively, because I've seen a little bit. You like to do some motion, you're setting up really gap lanes and such, and just the ability of speed and getting distance away from defenders is kind of the key when you have all those opportunities in arena. Does that actually translate, or am I making that up in my head, just trying to correlate how your offense has success with your past history?
Yeah, I mean, the arena game, the pass game definitely translates over, and that's what I brought. That Crofton always had a really strong run game. And the thing I brought was the arena football was the passing aspects. Some of the concepts in arena football do translate, some don't. In arena football, I got to run full speed to the line of scrimmage, and they snapped the ball right when I got to the line of scrimmage. So I had a little more advantage of the defense when I'm running full speed at them. Obviously, we can't do that in high school, but you can do some of the same concepts. And that's what I'm trying to bring is let them understand the concepts that we're trying to run out of multiple formations. I was fortunate. The quarterback I played for in Sioux City with the Sioux City Bandits was Jared DeGeorgia. And he was Kurt Warner's backup for the Barnstormers when Kurt Warner played for the Barnstormers. And, so Kurt Warner mentored him, then he mentored me. And then I was able to understand this game and how this game works at a better level. Cause my first couple, I really thought I was getting cut the first couple of practices because everything's so fast. And the first game was just amazingly how fast it is. Cause you got 8 full grown men inside of an arena of a hockey arena playing football. It's a little different, but a lot of fun. And I'm glad that I had that opportunity, and I'm able to now pass on some things to these kids here to understand the concepts of the pass game.
Speaking of your team, just with the impressive offensive ability, your defense, I think, has stood up, and it won't get the credit it deserves because of how impressive the offense is. But this is a team. So how do you translate experience, especially where you are now in the season, with a team that's not filled with a lot of seniors that are making those impact plays compared to your juniors and sophomores?
I think we talk about taking it one game at a time. We talk about just focusing on the task at hand, and the next task at hand now is Sandy Creek. We're going to get to the stadium earlier this week because it's a beautiful stadium. These kids dream their whole life about going and playing in Memorial Stadium. So it's a chance of a lifetime for these kids, but I don't want the moment to be too big for them. So we're going to get there early. We're going to go out, we're going to walk out there, and we're going to give them 5 to 10 minutes just to look around, not think about football, just take it all in. And then once that 5 to 10 minutes is over, we're going to come back and say, okay, we're going to go back in this locker room now. And now it's football. Now we're going to play a game. It's still 10 yards for a first down. It's still 6 points for a touchdown. It's just a football game. You're playing against high school kids who put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you do. So we're going to break it back down to just being a simple game, but definitely need to have them have an opportunity just to soak in the moment and to soak in how big it is, because it is overwhelming at first. I remember my first time down there as an assistant coach, very overwhelming. Just to be in that stadium, to be in the presence of all those things you've seen as a kid, you watch as a kid, and maybe not quite as much for me since I've been a part of some big games in other areas when I was in college and in the Arena Bowl. We went to the Arena Bowl a couple years when I was there. Understanding, take time to enjoy it, but then we got to get back focused and realize it's just a game. It might be played on a field you aren't used to, but it's just a game. It's still 80 yards and 8-man. It's still 10 yards for a first down. Like I said, you still got to do the little things right to win the game.
You talked about some of the big games that you've been a part of, but this team has played in some big games, whether it's week 1 and you're playing in 4 overtimes, or you've played a top 10 team that was in the polls for every single week in Bloomfield. Those hurt, but it feels like you learned and then overcame the number 1 team on the road in SRC just last Friday. What kind of translated in that upset for Shelby Rising, or against Shelby Rising City, I should say, that you learned from your past mistakes in those big games that happened earlier in the year?
I would say the one of the biggest thing is our kids kept their focus on the keys. I think in those 2 losses, there were some times we didn't take care of the football. Forgot about 5 points of contact when you run through the line. I think we had 5 fumbles in that first game. So really protecting the program. We call the football the program. Protect the program. That's the most important thing at any time on the field. And then just making sure you're not getting your eyes caught with eye candy. Don't be looking at the eye candy. Focus on your keys and do your job. Our big thing is alignment and assignment. especially on defense. Coach Connett, our defense coordinator, great guy, very technical. He's always alignment and assignment, guys. We need to align, and if you do your assignment, if everybody does their assignment, we'll be just fine no matter what play they run. And so we really focused on that, and kids did a good job of not watching the backfield, not watching the motions, not watching the fakes, and just watching what their linemen were doing, taking the proper steps. Offensive wise, the second half, we had a little bit different strategy with Jackson Lyon's big catch right before the half. Instead of opening up the offense and having some explosive plays, because explosive plays are great, but they also can go the other way sometimes. And we decided we're just going to grind it out. We said, okay, look, we need to eat clock the second half and get to that championship game. That's more important than us opening up the scoreboard and doing some things there. So I didn't want to put my defense in a bad situation. So at halftime, we decided we were going to switch to more of a just grind the clock out, get first downs, work on that. And the kids did a great job executing and putting together some long drives. I believe our first drive, second half, was a pretty long drive. And then the drive to end the game, we got the ball with like 7 minutes and 20 seconds left in the game, I think. And then they never saw the ball again. Then we just chunk, and got down there. And Tyson Jackson actually could have ran for a touchdown that very last play. Instead, he slides down to put it just under 2 minutes, and then we can kneel it out then. So very smart football player, very selfless football player, to, instead of getting that next score, just go down and know that just secured the victory.
To be fair, Tyson scored a lot this year and in his career, so maybe he didn't need one extra, but to put the icing on the cake and put his team in the state championship, I'm sure a memory he won't forget soon. I do want to talk a little bit about Tyson and your preseason conversations with him. He played quarterback for you last year, correct? Because he had maybe there were injuries or whatever the case was. What was that decision?
I went dead.
Sorry, did you cut out?
No, there's back now.
Okay, gotcha. I'll start that over. My bad.
Okay.
So what was that preseason conversation like with Tyson to move him from quarterback then to running back? It feels like it's a natural position for him, but he's been all over the place for your team over the past few years. But instead of putting him in one of the key positions in football, he seems to be flourishing behind center, just a couple of steps back behind quarterback.
Yeah, him and I had a talk. Last year, he was probably going to be one of our two running backs that we're going to use a lot of the time between Wyatt Tramp and him. But then Preston Foxhoven, as a freshman, goes down in that summer, tears his ACL in a basketball game. And Preston might have been the first freshman I would have ever started at quarterback, in as long as I've been doing this. And we had a lot of talks about him possibly being our starter. But then when he went down, we had to look for who else was going to step up. And we felt like Tyson Jackson was the kid. He was a smart kid. He could do some things at quarterback. So he played quarterback all last year. He had some good runs at quarterback when he was there. In the offseason with Preston coming back, Preston just a little bit more of a natural quarterback than what Tyson is. And I talked to Tyson, you're still going to play some quarterback. And he comes in there a little bit. We run him out of the Wildcat a little bit, but it's basically just a quarterback. He's thrown the ball a couple of times this year just to keep people honest. He was 100%. He goes, whatever it takes to win, coach. He didn't get mad. He didn't say anything. Just said, I'll do whatever it takes to win. He goes, I just want to be on the field and I want to win. So whatever you feel is going to give us the best opportunity. He never once complained about that. Never once cared. He knew he was going to be on the field somewhere, whether he plays fullback for us, he plays tailback for us. Like I said, he's played a little bit of a quarterback for us as well. So to have such a selfless kid that's willing to do whatever it takes to make the team better has been great to coach. Never questioning, just like, okay, no problem. There's been times he said, coach, put me in on kick return so I can go block for somebody. A kid who, probably should maybe be back returning kicks, but we just don't want to take any chances with him. But he's willing to go back and block for somebody. Just to have that selflessness that he has is amazing.
Up with Sandy Creek. Obviously, they're the number one team coming back. They were the preseason number one. They like to see if they can get their back-to-back title. You may be the underdog in this matchup just in terms of all of that narrative coming in. What do you like in your matchup, and how do you get the guys ready to try to slay that dragon that is the Cougars?
They're a good team, no doubt. And it's going to be a battle. I see this being a lot similar to the Shelby Ray City game, but I think they're going to score more points than that. They're going to be ready. They're well coached, really good coach there. They've been there. They've done it. They know what it takes, so they have that on us. We haven't been here, and we've never won a championship. So, they have the experience factor, but there's something to be said about us. We're kind of the wild card a lot of teams don't know about. We play a little bit different style that teams aren't used to. So I think we can maybe get them in a few situations where they're uncomfortable, hopefully. I think my guys are ready to do that. We're staying focused. I'm telling them right now, I said, guys, if you play the way you've been playing these last 3 weeks, I feel like you can play with anybody in the state at any time. We just got to focus and do our jobs. Keep your eyes on the prize. Don't get distracted by all this noise going on. I said there's going to be a lot of things going on this week. With I know there's been 4 or 5 players already got interviews, and they've had to do that, and they're really nervous about those and talking on like, oh, I said just relax, have fun with it. I said relax and have fun. Just know when we get to practice time, it's 100% about the practice, and we got to focus on the little things. We got to look at their tendencies and see what they do to try to help stop those, to try to help get them in 3rd and long. They're a team that their quarterback's good. He can throw the ball all over the place. They have some running backs that are great. They have some big O linemen. They got a really nice big receiver at 6'6". He's going to be tough. So, we know that it's going to be a battle. We're not looking to give them any locker room posters saying anything that dumb. I said, guys, just keep your heads and understand this is going to be a battle, and we want to make sure we're respectful to them because we know we're the underdog coming in to everybody else, but to us, we're not the underdog. We're just going out and play our game.
Okay, we're back. Ooh, that was close.
Yeah,
Coach, great stuff. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Best of luck to your team, and safe travels, obviously, to Lincoln. Wishing the best for a great game, and, of course, to stay healthy through that one. I have one final question for you, though. Do you think that this one's a shootout or more of a defensive game when you match up with Sandy Creek on Monday?
I think it's going to come. I don't think it's going to be a shootout. I mean, I think points are going to be at a premium. I think both defenses are pretty poised. So I think I can see this being a game that's somewhere in the 28-35, maybe 28-21. It's going to be a really close game. I don't think anybody's going to run away with it by any means. So that's what I see. I see us both getting our jabs in here and there, and it might come down to who has the ball last. Has a chance to put the game away in those last minutes. So, I have a lot of respect for them. Their coach reached out to me right away the next morning, congratulated me and said, let me know if there's anything we can do, make sure we're exchanging film, make sure we're getting things going. So, nothing but respect for them guys. But obviously we want to win the game.
All right, Coach, best of luck. Appreciate your time today on Small Town Ball, and looking forward to seeing your team in action at Memorial Stadium.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, that was Johnnie Ostermeyer, the head coach for Crofton football. And, of course, we'll have more of the championship game previews for you next time right here on Small Town Ball, production of Hurrdat Sports and NEB Press.